So this next section covers what Schillinger calls geometric inversion. This is pretty familiar probably to a lot of people, especially if you're into serialism again. And it's just flipping something upside down around a certain axis. Schillinger differentiates between geometric inversion. He calls it that because it's a literal flipping of the figure, as though you're flipping a picture upside down. He doesn't use this term, I don't believe, but I would use it to differentiate between what I would call diatonic inversion. So in other words, in geometric inversion, you're talking about a strict inversion, meaning a semitone up is a semitone down, a whole tone up is a whole tone down. With diatonic inversion, you'd be looking at scale degrees up and scale degrees down. So like, if you're in the key of C and you were inverting around that C axis, a D would become a B if you inverted it diatonically, because you're looking at a second up versus a second down. So in geometric inversion, which I think is what most people usually mean when they say inversion, a D up from C would become a B flat down. So that's what we're talking about here, is this geometric inversion. So this first variable here is an on-off sort of affair. Up until now, this has been 0, so it hasn't been doing anything. If you turn it on, it's now doing something. We're still dealing with our same old sequence of notes that we've been dealing with. So I know that's probably getting a little boring, but I'm just doing it so that it's clear what's actually happening here. And I turned auto-generate ARP order on, so it's just going to cycle through those notes. Now, with this on, as you can probably tell from the way that I've been doing things, I now have this rhythm that controls the rate at which it's flipping. So in other words, we're not just flipping here, but we have the ability to flip and then flip it again and flip it again at a certain rate. So our rhythmic figure that we've been using, I'll just look over here at the debug line. So it's 10 beats in duration. So I want it to flip every time through the rhythmic pattern. So I've set that to be 10. So it's going to flip every 10 beats. Now it's going to do that about this axis. So this is a MIDI. This is the note value, which is your axis of rotation, right? So and you can set this to be whatever you want, of course. So we're going to invert around the axis of 60. Now, if we look at our note list, it was 60, 62, 63, 65, 67 as before. So when we invert this, 60 is going to stay the same because that's our axis. 62 is going to become 58 because instead of adding 2 or subtracting 2, 63 is going to be 57, 65 is going to be 55, and 67 is going to be 53. So now this value here gives us the opportunity to skip the first duration. So in other words, if we want it to play in the normal orientation for whatever the first rhythmic value is here, in this case the only rhythmic value, so it's going to play in the ordinary orientation. So it's going to play 60 through 67 once through, and then it's going to flip, and then it's going to stay in that orientation for another 10 beats, and then it's going to flip again. So we can, if we wanted to start it in inversion mode, we would do 0, but we want to hear it once through in normal orientation, and then it's going to flip. So. So as you can see, it flipped and then it flipped back. So pretty straightforward. You can let's just say we're going to have it, and I'll do this. So it's going to stay the same for 6 beats, and then it's going to invert, and then 4 beats later it's going to flip back again, and so forth. Now you can have a flip around another axis where it sounds pretty ordinary now. Let's flip it around 62. As you can see, a little bit different. So you can get quite a lot of variety of this. So yeah, I encourage you to play with that. The examples I gave were pretty straightforward, but if you get creative with it, you can get quite a lot of variety.